All right, everyone, I have on Taylor Walker Sinning, and I had the pleasure of actually meeting her about a month ago. We were both on the retreat together for Needed, and it was so great to get to connect with so many different people. And then I connected with her on Instagram and wanted to bring her on. She is a certified personal trainer, holistic health coach, and fitness model, and she's also a hypnobirthing instructor, which we have never talked about. And you're a doula as well, correct? Yes. Okay. So kind of a jack of all trades. And so I would love to just chat with her today, get into a hypnobirthing mindset, and then talk anything birth related, doula related, because obviously that's where my passion lies as well. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. So I'd love to start with, how did you get into this work? I know when it comes to birth work, a lot of people, it started with their own birth stories and they're like, I need to get into this work. But that's not always the case. So I'd love for you to share yours.
Well, I think it's one and the same. I am actually, like you just said, a personal trainer. And when I got my pregnancy test, I wanted to figure out what was going to this 9-month journey going to look like for me. What is going to happen in my body, and how can I translate that to my clients and the people that come to my classes? So I went forward and got a pre-postnatal corrective exercise certification. And through that, I was able to learn about the history of birth and the physiology of birth and our bodies. And I thought, you know what? I hear a lot of negativity and fear surrounding birth. There has to be something more. So I went into a space called Amazing Births and Beyond. I was living in Miami, and the owner, who is also a prenatal chiropractor, handed me a book. And it was Hypnobirthing, the Mongan method. And ultimately, it changed my life. And through the course of my 9-month journey, acquiring the certification, doing the course, I had a wonderfully incredible, life-changing first hypnobirth. And then from there I said, I want to give this gift to more people. So that's how I got into birth work, and ultimately just became a hypnobirthing doula.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I actually took a hypnobirthing course during my doula certification, because you have to take so many different courses. But it was before I had ever had kids. So I never, like, I guess, really got to apply it to my life in my birthing experiences. With my second, I did do a lot more mindset type things, but I still don't know like a ton about hypnobirthing. Um, and one thing that I always preach, whether you listen on my podcast or on Instagram, is if you're pregnant, take some sort of birth education course. I'm like, I don't care if it's hypnobirthing. I don't care if it's the Bradley method. I don't care if it's the evidence-based birth class. Like, take something, because all of them are going to include some of that like physiological what's going to happen. So I think let's talk about some of the misconceptions when it comes to hypnobirthing. I think that a lot of people are like, well, if I'm going to do hypnobirthing, it's just some like woo woo. They're just going to teach me
Mhm.
how to like meditate. I don't know. You tell me all the things that you hear.
You're 100% right. The name sounds very crunchy, granola. You think of free births out in the field, and I'm
Yeah.
just going to hypnotize myself and breathe my baby out. And at the end of the day, yes, is there an element to it? But if you've meditated, you've done hypnobirthing. You've trained for a hypnobirth. And what I like to say, and when I'm marketing my class, it's comprehensive childbirth education. So if you're showing up to a hypnobirthing class, it is my hope that your educator will welcome any type of birth that you wish to have, whether that's,
Mhm.
we're going to get the epidural, I have to schedule my cesarean, and I need something to keep me calm, or I want a completely unmedicated home birth. Hypnobirthing can apply to every circumstances. Now, what is it? It's a philosophy, but it's also a technique. And it's based on positive affirmations, visualization, of course, hypnosis or meditation, and childbirth education, all packaged up into a 5-week course to help you prepare for a calm, gentle birth experience.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely feel like those stereotypes are around it for sure. But like you said, I mean, the education piece, I think is so vital. So whether you plan on bringing meditation into your birth, I think that mindset is a huge, huge thing. Um, and again, no matter what kind of birth you're planning for, things can happen. Um, in birth work, we're always like, if you want to get an epidural, great, but you also, it might not work. So then what's your plan? Um, you might be planning for a vaginal birth, and then you need a cesarean. So there's so many things that you can do to plan. But I also love that you mentioned like I'm having a planned cesarean and I need to still be educated. I think that that's something that's like left out a lot. I feel like a lot of people just think if I'm having a planned cesarean, there's nothing I can do, there's nothing I can prepare for. The fate of that is written. But I
Yeah,
love that there's something you can do.
yeah, and within the course, we actually, in the workbook that you receive, there's a whole list of cesarean birth preferences that you can move through to make it more empowered, more in control, and ultimately be the driver of that birth experience. And that's something where so many women, I think, we just wing it because we have our births entrusted with our providers, and that's wonderful. But you're right, it's like education is the most important piece of the puzzle that you can do for yourself if you want a more empowered and controlled birth experience.
Right, right. So let's dive into, so we dove into a little bit of like what it's not and a little bit of what it is. I'd love for you to share like a few things that people would learn as far as like maybe the mental aspect goes. Um, because again, I feel like there's still that stereotype. Okay, so for the mental aspect, do I have to be a meditator, somebody who meditates in order to do this?
I did not ever meditate. Obviously, being a fitness professional, where the mind goes, the body follows. So I had years of fitness training on that end. But I have so many clients who've never stepped into a gym a day in their life. But really, it's a mindset shift. It's learning the key principles. Basically, the body is a robot theory. Where the mind goes, the body follows. You're going to learn how to allow your body or for your body to make endorphins, how to get into a relaxed state, understanding the physiology of birth and how fight or flight can affect your birth experience. You're going to learn the 3 different phases of labor and how to utilize your breath during your latent labor, your active labor, and ultimately your birth and birth of the placenta. You also touch on postpartum. Oftentimes, we're so focused on what's in the hospital bag, how do we prepare for our births, that we often neglect what does postpartum look like. How can we focus on that 4th trimester? And the course will also give you tangible knowledge and information to set yourself up for success there. So that when you leave the course, you have tips to focus on and tangible tools to work on your mindset. You have tangible tools to actually, I know we don't like to use the term birth plan, but prepare for your labor experience. You will also have the knowledge to decide for yourself, am I with the right provider? Where
Mhm.
do I want to give birth and why would I want to give birth there? You touched on before, an epidural might work, might not work. It might take on one side and not the other. You might feel discomfort and think that you're not going to feel anything. And then you're so overwhelmed with feeling any sort of pressure. So we put terms on what you might feel during your labor so that you're prepared for it. And ultimately, the mindset, the positive affirmations, all of the things that go into the course will hopefully lead to then excitement for your birth experience. And then you'll
Mhm.
learn more on top of that. But
Right, right. I remember doing my first, a doula that I worked with gave me like a hypnobirthing recording that it was like a sleep one that I would
Mhm.
listen to going to bed. And it was just like very, very comforting to me. I love like guided sleep
Yes.
meditation type things. That's pretty much the only time I meditate going to
There's
sleep.
no time. We're moms. Like, there's no
Yeah.
time, but for a lot of that stuff. But yeah, if you put it on, and that's one part of it, you get a 3 different hypnobirthing tracks, and there is one, the rainbow relaxation, that we do suggest doing as you fall asleep. And it's still amazing that with that practice, even if you fall asleep, it does still work and helps get
Hmm.
yourself into your body on your birthing day.
Yeah.
The mind's a powerful thing.
Yeah. So are there tracks that you play during birth or during labor?
Mhm. Yeah, so the rainbow relaxation is one that actually translates from the practice falling asleep to the birth. So typically we recommend putting on your rainbow relaxation not super early in labor because you're not going to be that uncomfortable. Typically, as you progress and you get into a more active labor and you need more control over your breath, you need your stamina, you need to get in your mindset. Then you put on the rainbow relaxation to just allow your body to relax because you've practiced this. But then also early on in labor, there could be the positive affirmations. If maybe you had a crazy day and you go into labor, a lot of times, and I'm sure you know this, you have clients that go into labor when the moon is up. So they need to find their rest. They need to build a little bit of excitement moving into the more active labor phase. So there's a positive affirmation track on there as well. Or if you're looking to, okay, I'm going to birth my baby today, you want to maybe take hold of your birth imagery track. That's also another one. So you have different options. And whenever I teach the course, and I have a cohort tonight, is I always tell them, you're going to get a ton of tools here. You're going to have a bunch of scripts for your partner to read. You are going to have your own deepening exercises. You have your tracks, but you're going to also do what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you're going to go through the tools, you're going to go through the workbook at the end of the class and be like, you know what? I really resonated with this. I didn't resonate with this. That's okay. Use the tools that work for you.
Right, right. So as your experience as a doula, how do you take your hypnobirthing techniques that you've learned to a birth with you, even if maybe the client didn't do hypnobirthing?
Right. And there definitely is a difference when you see like even clients that have had birth education, we can touch a client so much during their pregnancy before you get to your labor. And there's a very big difference between the ones that prepared mind, body, soul, and the ones that maybe you got hired last minute, you've done the educational piece, but there wasn't a lot of mindset preparation. But I think the calm that hypnobirthing as a doula can bring to the room is you have a lot of tools to use. You know what zones in their body to look for. It's very similar to just being a doula in general and the knowledge that you take in, but also the practice of mindset. You have the scripts to pull from that can bring their breath back, the relaxation, the touch, massage, rebozo, all of these things that we utilize as a doula also translate to the hypnobirthing course and ultimately to supporting a hypnobirthing client or not someone who did not take the hypnobirthing course as a client.
Yeah. I remember when I was in my course, I mean, they even went over some birthing positions and ways that the partner could help. And I mean, I felt it was very in depth for childbirth education. Like it
Yeah.
really did prepare you for what's normal, what's not. This is what early labor will look like. This is what active labor will look like. Like just very, very much a lot of great information.
And you just touched on a really important, which is class 2, is partners connection to baby and to mom and the birth experience. So class number 2 is really focused heavily on connecting partner to the birth experience. So there's a script on connecting to baby, a script to read to mom about, and it's very vulnerable. And sometimes you'll see, some tears rolling or
Yeah.
it chills, baby starts to go crazy, and also start to build anticipation for the partners, especially if they're not going to hire a doula and this is their prep. How can partners advocate in the hospital setting? How did they work on positioning? How can they do counter pressure? All of these things. So it really, class 2 is really about bringing the families together or whoever the partner is that's going to be there to support the labor. And it's really cool to see that excitement start to translate in classes 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually something that I've been talking a lot more about lately is partners. Because I'm sure you've been at births too, where they just really don't know. Most partners don't know what to do. And that's where doulas really help out because we give them a role. Research shows that if you have a doula there, you look more fondly about your partner during your experience than if one's not, because we're telling them how to help you. So
Yeah.
we're giving them roles. But that's one thing that I feel like I could just see so much more of in births. Like I feel like partners tend to be really passive when it comes to medical interventions because we do see doctors as authoritarian figures. And it's almost like the police just came into the room and they're like, you have to start Pitocin right now. And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, I need my partners to know what the plan is and to have a little bit of education, especially if you don't have a doula, because it shows that when you have somebody with you who has a little bit of education and knows your plan, you still reap so many of the benefits without having a doula. So I'm like, you need to step up, basically.
No, definitely. And honestly, afterwards, like in my second birth experience, I had such an unbelievable OB. So I actually had 2 births in the hospital because they were very much, if you are having a healthy mom, healthy baby, they had a natural birthing suite in the hospital, unmedicated, it was just hands off.
Mm-hmm.
However, hospital protocols, there's something about the EMF monitors that
Totally.
just cannot stomach. I can't stand. I definitely got to the hospital like in very active labor, and my husband, I mean, they were giving me a hard time about it, and he stepped up and he ripped them off. And he was
Yeah.
like, she doesn't need these. She's fine. And then finally my midwife came in and was like, it's not what you want, it's what she wants. And
Yeah.
that, and then the after of that, that connection, is like, you're my person. Like, thank you so much for doing that for me. It was a really,
Right.
really great moment. So even though I did have my doula there, which was so amazing, to have your partner really step up for you in that way and have the confidence to do that. And that
Yeah.
happened second time around. But it was really just it's something I'll never forget as his
Hmm.
birth.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And I feel like, yeah, most people wouldn't have the confidence to do that because it's like, oh, she needs that. Okay. Like you just go along with it. But when you're educated and and obviously your partner also trusts you, like, you've done the work and these things. And I think that's a really big thing too, is your partner trusting you, trusting in your body, trusting in your ability, trusting that you can do this. I know that a lot of times they don't want to see you in pain. They don't want to
Mhm.
see, some of the things that happen during birth, but having that confidence in you, I think also that bond is built during childbirth education.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also why I highly recommend it. I'm like, enroll your partner, get them on
Yeah,
board.
and hypnobirthing, we expect that partners are going to be there. If someone
Yeah.
doesn't have a partner, of course, like, and it doesn't have to be a spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend. It could be a friend that you're entrusted to. It's just a person that's going to be there solely for you.
Right.
Because, at the end of the day, we know in postpartum, it's hard find someone to mother the mother. But in this case, it's like having a support person have a really tangible, important role in this. I think hypnobirthing does such a great job of bringing them in and preparing them for the birth experience.
Yeah, that's great. Um, and then I was going to ask you, oh yeah, so you said that you used hypnobirthing with your first.
Mhm.
Um, and then I'm assuming your second.
Yeah. Yes.
So how was that for you? Like, what do you think the difference was that it made in your births?
Oh, it was just, I think from start to finish, so in control. I was able to practice through fitness, which I know we'll touch on a little bit later, and that's obviously my wheelhouse, but it was an enjoyable experience. There wasn't fear. It was like I had okay, this is point A, this is point B, this is point C. Everyone was there. No one around me was high anxiety. It's like even my mom was there and I was in transition. We knew every step of the way that it was okay.
Hmm.
It's vomiting, but I'm fine. I know I'm about to meet my baby. This is exciting. Things that would want to make probably women run if we just wing this experience. Things that would make you feel nervous never made me nervous because they were one step closer for me to
Hmm.
meet my baby. So even though I wasn't thinking, hey, I'm going to become an educator in this first time around, it was calm, control. Even when I went to triage in the hospital and you have the lights and you have everything else, put my eye mask on, had my relaxation track in my ears, and within an hour I met my baby both times.
Yeah.
And to have that in a setting that can be really overwhelming, um, lead to a lot of interventions, was really just such an empowering experience for me.
Hmm. I remember when we met in California, you had talked about where you gave birth and how it
Mhm.
was like a really, physiologically birthing friendly place, which is really amazing because you don't find that a lot in most hospitals.
Yeah. So if anyone is in South Florida that is listening, Dr. Skeet, Serene Health, she has completely transformed the birthing atmosphere in Broward General. Um, she actually told me for my second one, she's like, "Why are you having this baby in the hospital? Go home and have your baby."
Yeah.
Like, but I was so comfortable with her. I was so safe with her.
Hmm.
Uh, and she just created this incredible environment in a hospital system, which we know is not the easiest thing to do in a hospital setting. And then on top of it, if you are a woman of color, it's even more difficult to navigate. But she was like, "Yep, you want to bring a tub in? Let's bring that tub in. You want to?" So it was, she's such a gift. And I just wish that more providers would practice the way that she practices.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'll have to get her information from you and try to bring her on the podcast too, because
Definitely. Definitely.
I I'd love to get her perspective also, like as an OB, because I mean, you do hear, at least I hear all the stuff that OBs are telling my clients.
I know. It's amazing.
Yeah. You're like, where did this even come from? Like there was like one thing that happened and I even tried Googling it. Google didn't even know of it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm like, this,
Yeah.
there's no research founded in what this doctor is saying. So, um, but yeah, it's really amazing. Choosing the right provider is huge,
Huge.
huge.
And being comfortable with maybe leaving your provider if
Yeah.
you're not getting the right type of treatment, or if you're 30 weeks pregnant and they're already planting the seeds for induction or cesarean and you want, an unmedicated birth. And yeah, it really just, this course gave me so much confidence. And then ultimately, once I kind of went on this journey, and then I was already with Dr. Skeet just as a patient, but then to just be so supported, so loved, so guided through this, it was, again, I'm so thankful. I've had two just beautiful, calm, gentle, supported experiences. And you hear birth trauma, it's very real and it happens every day.
Right, right. I'd love to talk about the fitness aspect because that's obviously a big part of what you do too. So how did that play into all of this?
So, fitness for me was really just a place to practice what I've learned. Again, because the visualization, the positive affirmations are such a big part of the course and of putting that into practice. So I used my really intense classes to visualize myself in two places. One was in the clouds. I would kind of, when it really got tough, I would go out into a space mentally that really made me feel extremely peaceful and at ease. So one was in the clouds. The other one was, it was kind of like a scene out of Gladiator where it was very golden, and it was in, I don't know, Tuscany. And I was under this weeping willow tree in a white dress holding CJ. And that's what I would just envision, this beautiful, like, just moment between me and him. And we made it. And it was just golden and peaceful and yummy. So I would use fitness, those places where things got really uncomfortable, to challenge myself, to push myself. And it was all about, again, the mental preparation of what can I see through this discomfort? How can I get through? And then how am I talking to myself?
hmm
Am I talking to myself in a positive way when things really get tough, or does it go down, down, down and end up being negative? And it would always come back to positive affirmations and visualizations, and of course, tie it all together with the breath work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I do think that it's important to like practice being uncomfortable. I don't remember what course I was in. I was in some birth course that I took where they had you hold an ice cube in your hand
Love it.
and like practice just breathing through it and
Hmm.
working on that for your labor, or, just like different modes of discomfort. There was like one other thing I can't remember that we did, that it was just like, okay, now just you have to hold it the whole time, like, just breathe
Yeah.
through it and practicing those modes of discomfort. Cause that's definitely something that we don't think about either. Like we're like, as much as a lot of people don't prepare physically either, but as much as like we don't, I think that we even more don't like prepare mentally. Like if you actually want to have a certain kind of birth, you really have to prepare. And even if you are go with the flow, I think you still have to prepare. Even if you're like, whatever happens, happens. It's like, okay, but do you want whatever happens happening to you? Or do you want
Hmm.
whatever happens is my decision and I'm a part of it?
Exactly. And they're two completely different things.
Totally. I know. I see that a lot. I'm sure you do too. Because once you get into this work, it's like you can't unsee things.
Yeah. You can't. And you feel sometimes, even as a provider, because I think there's still a stigma, especially in a hospital setting, very different at birthing center or at home. But especially in a hospital setting with what we do as doulas, there's still kind of this wall that goes up with provider, client, a birthing person, and then us as kind of the in between. So it's like we could have all this knowledge and all this empowerment and everything else, but sometimes it pigeonholes us. So that's why it is really, really important to have the families just have the education so that it can work in tandem. And ultimately, yes, the decision is there in their hands. But we don't like to be uncomfortable,
Right.
right? We don't like to
Right.
do the cold plunges or the hard workouts or things like that. But really, if you are going to go into one of the biggest fitness events of your life, which is labor and delivery, it is really important to get uncomfortable.
Yeah. Um, like I was saying before, I didn't really prepare as much mentally for my first. Because I'm like, I know the information, I have the knowledge. I did a lot of things physically as far as like um spinning babies and different things just to try to make sure that the baby was in the optimal position. She was not, but my second was in the perfect position. And man, what a difference that labor made. But also with my second, I did do mental preparation. And I made some mantras for myself. And like the biggest one, which we've carried into our family, like this is a family value of ours, that like we'll say to our girls too, is I can do hard things. And like my 3-year-old will be like, I can't do it. And we're like, you can do hard things. You can do it. But now I
Yeah.
have to watch myself, because if I'm like, oh, I can't, my husband's like, she's watching you. Like, you can't say that now. But it really did help with my second, doing that mental preparation. Like I said, it was different. I think your second labors are usually a little bit easier. The baby was in the perfect position, but I started doing some affirmations and stuff that I had found online, probably like halfway through my pregnancy, and did it all the way through. And even when I was in labor, I listened to um, an early labor birth affirmation. And then I do feel like I was really able to go inside during my contractions. And my husband was saying, like, from watching, the experiences were so different too. After I had my second, he was like, you made that look so easy. And I'd get mad at him. I'm like, that was not easy. Are you kidding me? And he's like, you were just so peaceful. And I'm like, my internal dialogue was different. There were times where I'm like, man, I don't know if I could do this. I remember asking him a couple times, like, I don't think I can do it. And he's like, yes, you can. But just my internal dialogue and the things that I was telling myself, even about the contractions that were coming, was so different. So I definitely plan on doing that this time around again. I'm like, I have to mentally prepare myself, because whatever I was doing last time, like, worked.
Yes. And that's a big part of it. We spend at least 30 to 45 minutes on preparing positive affirmations, what they look like, and how to get them into your subconscious. Because very similar experiences, second time around, it was the same thing. And even my mom was like, how did you make that look so easy? I was like, inside, I'm like, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, you override that system with the positivity, with the breath work, and you get to the other side. And it's a monumental thing. But again, where the mind goes, the body follows. And you can train your mind to have this birth that to the exterior does look pretty seamless.
Right, right. I know. I'm nervous about the third one though, because especially when I was working with this group of midwives, they'd always say, like, your first one's really hard, your second one's super easy, and your third one throws you for a loop. And I just talked to like 2 people in the last week who were like, my third was my most difficult birth, or my third this. And I'm like, no, I'm so
But
scared
again, you just
now.
gotta swat it away. That's what we talk about. Swat away the birth stories that don't serve you.
Right,
And because you had a tough first one, you tougher first one. So maybe you're really going into your second. Let's just say that.
right. Let's
And
hope.
then let me know how the third goes.
Right, I will. So are you currently practicing as a doula right now?
So young kids, moms
Yes.
too. It's
Yes.
very difficult. So I'm more focused on my hypnobirthing
Hmm.
and teaching that. Then I'm probably going to take maybe 2 to 3 births a year right now,
Yeah.
because I also have other jobs on the side.
Right. I know. You're, like I said at the beginning, you're doing it all.
Tired. Aren't we all though? It's
Right.
part of the course.
Right. But it's also important. I mean, you're also like doing things that you enjoy and that you love.
Yes. I feel so grateful, because for people that don't know or haven't been following me a while, I have a master's in K-12 physical education. And I started my career after ending a professional dance career was I got a job at a high school teaching PE. So I taught ninth grade and adapted PE for children with special needs. And I thought I was going to do that forever. And ultimately, I wanted to teach dance in a school system. But life happens. Husband's job took us everywhere after he proposed, and I kept starting over. And then ultimately, it led me to this fantastically amazing, passionate career in all of these things. And I'm really grateful for it. So change was hard. It was a bumpy road, but
Yeah.
I'm so happy to where it led me. And again, I'm so passionate. I'm so grateful that these are the things that I get to call work.
Do you just do in-person hypnobirthing classes or do you do virtual as well?
No, I do mostly virtual. I think
Okay.
COVID brought that to the forefront, especially when people had to give birth in such an unknown environment with little support. So I teach mostly virtual. If a client is local and they want to do something private, I will do that as well. But right now, it's mostly virtual.
Okay. So for people listening, where can they find and follow you and take one of your courses at?
Yes. So if you are on social media, you can always follow me on taylorwalkerfit.com. Excuse me, at Taylor Walker Fit. And then if you want to learn a little bit more about hypnobirthing, you can go to taylorwalkerfit.com/hypnobirthing.
Awesome. And I will have all of that in the show notes as well. So it'll be easy for them to find and follow you. And since the podcast is called Morning Java, I love to ask my guests, how do they take their morning Java? How do you drink your coffee in the morning?
Well, I just gave up coffee. So my
Oh,
morning
wow.
mantra.
When did you
I'm
do this?
now a matcha girl. So for me, I put a little collagen, a little L-glutamine, and I have a little colostrum. I whip it
Okay.
all up in a nut milk creamer, and then I add my matcha, and that's my little latte in the morning.
Awesome. I've been hearing a lot more about colostrum powder. I don't know anything
Yes.
about it.
So, I mean, I could go into a whole thing, but basically for gut healing, I have a gluten
Okay.
sensitivity and wanted to start to do some gut work. So we did a big elimination for a month so that I could find my energy again and deal with my anemia, and it's working, and I'm so excited. So colostrum is really just for gut health to heal the lining and start to take in good nutrients.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, I have to look more into that because there's, yeah, a lot I could go into on gut health as well and my family. So, but I need to look more into that. So, yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for your time and energy today. And I'm excited for the listeners to learn about hypnobirthing.
Likewise, I'm so happy you had me. Thank you so much.